Couldn't be a more beautiful morning out there. Like I think this is like the perfect weather, right? If it were raining, it'd be even better, but like or like a little drizzle or something. But this is really nice. Like it's comfortable. I lit like a pumpkin candle in my office this morning. I was like, let's go, right? It felt like fall. And then it'll be probably 90 by this weekend again. But for today, feels so nice, right? So excited. We had soccer practice yesterday and it was only like 86. It's like this is nice, right? I could get used to this. But I won't because I know it'll get. And I got my Conjuring tickets, so I'm ready for this weekend, right? My 13-year-old is like through the roof excited. It's her first like big scary movie. I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. Then I have to go see Demon Slayer first, and then I get to see that next. So got a weekend of movies coming up, which could be worse, right? We're almost to the weekend. I wanted to remind you of this as we get closer to that and also to the weekend. That first part of your paper is due coming up. So only worth 10 points. It's really short. But if you go on Canvas, let me just show you really quickly before we jump back into anxiety. Speaking of anxiety, right? This is really low stakes, but I think it'll be a really great way to start thinking about your character and your paper. If you're on our Canvas page and you click on assignments, it's right here where it says diagnosis paper part 1, character and show selection. It has all the instructions and this is where you turn it in. So all you're doing for part 1 is you're picking what show and character you plan to focus on. And then you're giving me like a short description of why. Okay, so it's like your show and character. Give me the citation information. It doesn't have to be in any format, but like the name of the show, who directed it and when and all of that. Just make sure you have it. Not worried about APA, any formatting at all, just have it there. And then like a paragraph of why you're interested in this person. And that's it. So it's probably like a half a page at the most, but be thinking about who you want to spend some time analyzing. And again, it can be a TV character, it could be a movie character. I've had people do video game characters. If you really want to do a book character, I'm open to that as well. Anyone have someone in mind already? Have someone you're kind of thinking of a little bit? You can change it at any time. Okay, so if you see something different and you're like, oh, I got to do that person instead, that's fine. I would suggest that you change it before you do part 2, okay, which won't be due for like another month or so. But when we get to part 2, you're doing like a little bit of a rough draft and some bulleted thoughts. And I'd hate for you to have to redo that. You're welcome to. But I think now would be a good time to kind of pick somebody. So one character, and people always want to do more than one, but pick one because you're going to dive into them in like depth and diagnose them and analyze them and so on. So that'll be due on Monday by Monday night. So I'll remind you again on Monday, but I wanted to put it on your mind. If you finish it, you can turn it in at any time. It's already open, so you can turn it in now. Or if you finish it over the weekend and just want it off your list, turn it in. But are there any questions about this for the moment? Again, like paragraph, character, why, and then like the show information, just so you have it for later. Yeah.
Is there like a particular diagnosis you have to have for them, or what can it be something like really extreme?
It can be any diagnosis that is recognized in the DSM. Okay, so and it could even be more than one. I would say keep it to 1 or 2. But yeah, it can be anything, whatever you think your character has. I've even had people argue against the diagnosis. So let's say like a character is diagnosed as something in the film and you disagree, you could argue against it. Really creative. Someone last year wrote a paper about Harry Potter and then he had schizophrenia. He made the whole thing up because he was abused from like living in a cabinet under the stairs, right? He was abused, so he made up this fantasy that he was like this grand important person. It was so creative, like I'll remember it forever. It doesn't have to be anything like that, but you can take a very different perspective on a character if you have one. That's totally fine too. Okay, so that they have a disorder or even against a particular disorder, either would be fine. Anything else for now? I look forward to your characters, right? Pick somebody you're excited about. Now, you're going to spend a lot of time thinking about them. So try and pick somebody that really like interests you. But again, the directions are here. If you forget, it should be less than a page. I will never take off for you giving me too much. As a side note, in case you were curious, I had teachers who like, if you went one word over, would take points off. If you go over, I never will mind. Okay, so it's not a big deal, but it really literally is like a paragraph about who you picked and why, and then the citation information. So it shouldn't take you long. The longest part is just picking who you want to commit to. Okay. So I'll remind you again on Monday, but just to put it on your mind, otherwise we'll go back to our anxiety disorders. And we left off here, right? We were talking a lot about phobias, right? Flooding and systematic desensitization and treating different phobias. I have to tell you that last night there was a spider in my daughter's room, well, my twins' room. It was hanging from the ceiling, and they're like, "Come kill it!" And I'm like, "No, get your mom. That's her job." And then there was a lizard in our like a dead lizard. One of our cats brought it in. I'm terrified of spiders, and my partner is terrified of lizards. So we always like take each other's fear, right? And she's like, "You get the spider, I'll get the lizard." I was like, "Why? Like, why would you do that to me?" She's like, "Just go get the spider." So I killed the spider and she killed the lizard. We faced our fears, right? And like, I was sweating though. Like it wasn't fun. I'm still thinking about it and it's been like 24 hours. But really good to face your fears either directly or through like a more kind of gradual way. A lot of people prefer the first one as we talked about. So what we'll do today, panic attacks, panic disorder, OCD. We have a few more like big disorders in this category. Panic attacks are pretty common. How many of you like know someone, either yourself or someone in your life who's had a panic attack at some point? Okay. A lot of you, right? And oftentimes people end up in emergency rooms because they think they're having a heart attack because it can feel that like drastic and intense. My mother-in-law had a panic attack like a year or two ago and went to the emergency room thinking she was having a heart attack. And they're like, "It's just anxiety, calm down and like go home." They were kind of insensitive about it. But it's very common that people have that feeling of like that pressure. And the more you panic about it, the more it creates those symptoms in your body. So with a panic attack, you have a bunch of different symptoms that happen really quickly. These don't tend to last very long, but you can pay for it for a while. Okay, so like they can be exhausting and kind of wear you out for the rest of the day, but the experience itself tends to be pretty short-lived. So with these, what you see is 4 or more symptoms. We'll get a list of them, 4 or more that reach a peak typically within about 10 minutes. Okay, so they kind of reach this very like sharp peak and then kind of gradually start to go away. And there's a ton of different things that people can experience. One of the most common ones is heart palpitations. Your heart starts pounding like it's coming out of your chest. Again, very common to misinterpret this as like a heart attack, right? That happens a lot. People start sweating or trembling or shaking. A lot of, again, physical stuff, which is why people tend to think something is medically wrong rather than psychologically. You have shortness of breath. People sometimes feel like they're choking or can't swallow. And again, just imagining these things as you're experiencing them, they create more panic, right? It kind of fuels itself, which makes it more and more intense. It can be very hard to kind of stop that cycle. A few other things, people sometimes have what's called derealization. It's almost like they get tunnel vision and the world around you can feel very far away or unreal, which again can create more panic. Sometimes people have like numbness or tingling. Hot flashes. Let's see if there's anything else I want to add up here. There's oftentimes this feeling that you're going to die, like a sense of impending death. And so you have 4 or more of these that reach a peak within a matter of roughly 10 minutes or so, and then they start to go away. If somebody has one panic attack, we don't consider that a disorder. One by itself is not enough. Bless you. But if you start to have them recurrently, if you've had more than one, technically it's just more than one, then we would diagnose you with panic disorder. what happens is people who have a panic attack start to become afraid that they're gonna have another one, right? And so then they don't want to leave their house. They don't want to be out in the world. They don't want to be in a classroom in case it happens there, or at work in case it happens there, right? You start to get this panic that you'll have another one. And what that can sometimes cause is something called agoraphobia. Agoraphobia is a really like multifaceted phobia. And it's so common with panic disorder that we actually diagnose it with or without agoraphobia. Because what happens again is if somebody has panic attacks regularly, they're afraid to go out into the world because then they're not in a place where they feel safe if one were to happen. So agoraphobia, in this case, is like a separation from a source of security, like being in your home or being somewhere safe or where you're not surrounded by people. It can also be kind of an intense fear of crowds, public spaces, or not being able to escape. Okay? I have agoraphobia. My kids make fun of me for it. It's like really mild, right? But I don't like to sit in the middle of a row. Like if we go to a movie or we go to like a performance, those are the worst because they're like much quieter, right? Movies are typically loud. But like if we go somewhere where there's like a long row, I have to sit on the end. Right. And my kids know this. We always fight. My daughter Emma and I always fight over the end seat now. I'm like, all right, I'll sit one in, but that's as far as I want to go. Right. Like, because I feel like I can't get out if I need to. And right now I have such a good excuse. I'm like, I have to sit on the end because it's so hard to walk all the way in. Right. But I like to be able to get out. Like in a classroom, I would sit like near the door, right? So I can get out of here quickly, or like in the front so I can get out quickly. So that's one way that agoraphobia can present. But another way that it can present is not wanting to go out at all, right? And you see this a lot in movies that have like writers. There's a couple of them. I just blinked on the name. Let's see if it comes back to me. Mims Island or something like that. But Jodie Foster, like she has panic disorder and she doesn't want to go out because she's afraid she'll have a panic attack. It tends to be portrayed with authors in the media for whatever reason. You had your hand up, your thought or question.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, about like on a plane, sometimes you don't have a choice.
I hate planes, right? But I mean, unless we're going on a cruise, and then I'll tolerate it for sure. But interestingly, like I want to be all the way in, like by the window, like all the way sandwiched in. Like there's no way I'm gonna, because I can't escape anywhere, right? Like there's nowhere to go. So in that case, it's like I'll be all the way in the row. But my kids always want the window, so I end up in the middle, which just makes me uncomfortable. But yeah.
How would they discern diagnosis of agoraphobia and fear to not being able to escape this particular aspect? If they, let's say, like their first exposure to finding out that they have that particular aspect of agoraphobia in a tight space.
Yeah.
How would that go from
Claustrophobia.
is diagnosed to claustrophobia?
Yeah.
It's like, because I know that people that are claustrophobic also kind of have that same fear as well. But
You could.
it kind of pertains to this, smaller
Yeah.
point. But I just wanted to like kind of ask if like someone's first exposure to not being able to escape is in short, or is in like a confined space.
Yeah.
They don't have claustrophobia, but when you have claustrophobia, how would that?
They can be easy to mistake, right? And it could be that you have both, or they could go together. You can have more than one phobia for sure. But so claustrophobia, you don't like to be confined, you don't like tight spaces or feeling like that trapped feeling. But there are threads in common there where someone could have both. This one, again, also it could be crowds. Like it's strange. This one has so many elements to it that it really should be divided into like multiple things, but it's all kind of clustered together.
It's like by not being able to escape, it's like sense of security, like at all, like no sense of security at all with yourself.
It could be, right? Of like,
I'm just asking. It's just to make me curious at all,
Yeah.
like how the not being able to escape kind of ties into crowds. Other aspects.
so with the crowds, it's like you feel like trapped within like all of these people. I mean, you feel like you can't get out of it. Versus like, so you have to look at like kind of the main
So the people
driving factor. Yeah, so is it that like you don't like to be confined and you don't like the small space, or is it that you feel like you can't get out?
Okay.
And so kind of looking at the main, what is the main fear
Okay.
there? And it might be hard to tease them apart. It could be both,
That
right?
actually answers question.
Okay, good.
Please, okay.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So I actually kind of have both.
Okay. Yeah, and that's possible,
and,
right?
Like I'm sweating and wait for you, right? But so it developed because in the military we're trained to like look out for any kind of potential harm.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to be on guard 24/7. And then it just developed into crowds. Yeah, I feel like there can be anything can just happen.
Sure.
And then I started feeling closed in, claustrophobic, I can't breathe, I don't know how to escape or get out of this situation. I think if I'm in that crowd, how am I gonna get out? How can I squeeze out? How can I escape? It just it's just a lot going
Yeah.
on once you're in that situation or even like in a situation when it comes up.
And I can see how the two are connected, right? Like, and they can be so connected. And it's wild, like a lot of the time, again, you can trace phobias back, right? Like to either like something you were taught, something you were exposed to. It's so random. Like as you were saying that, like I can think of where my agoraphobia started. Like it started in high school. I had a ninth grade English class, and it's funny. I think I'm like just putting this together as we're like talking about it right now. But in my ninth grade English class, I started coughing, like I wasn't feeling well, and I felt like I was gonna throw up, right? Because I was sick, and my teacher wouldn't let me leave, right? Like she wouldn't let me just step outside, and I was like over here, sitting here, and I was coughing and coughing, and everyone was staring at me, and I threw up, and everyone was staring at me, and everyone was laughing at me, and she still didn't let me leave, like, oh, the 90s, very different time, right? The 80s and 90s, right? All about the emotional trauma. But and I think that's where it came from. It was that like I can't get out when I want to, right? And so oftentimes these things have like a root in something, and it could be something totally rational and logical, like assessing a threat or like kind of evaluating everything. But then it just goes awry. It gets a little bit out of control. Yeah.
I think systematic, I guess, school was at back in the day. Sure. And so I've had panic attacks, and I know like I never really realized where it was from, other than just being overwhelmingly anxious, but not understanding why. Yeah, it could be different things, like people behind me, and then triggering things. But at the same time, I see nowadays like how hard it was to deal with that, and then like now figure out what's going on versus like the other people. It's like I guess it's more candid, like, oh, it's a lot different, like it's more free. So I guess I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but it's like it's I guess I was a child now. Nowadays, where it's just if you're feeling anxious or panic, it's nice to see that mental health is more noticeable and not as judgmental, and you have to hide it as much.
Oh, for sure. Way different climate now than, 20, 30 years ago. We've come a long way in our like sympathy toward mental health related stuff. Yeah.
Something about the movie. Like I don't know if it's like a movie one, but I thought you were gonna put like Basie in something.
You could, right? It can hit like such a point that people do pass out or faint, right? That can happen because what happens sometimes is people get really short of breath, which can make you lightheaded, and you could faint. It's not the most common, but it's possible, right? It's definitely one way that it could kind of affect you. So it could be that you pass out from it. That could be another one. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question, right? So social phobia tends to be the like all eyes on you, like presentation, like social anxiety tends to be more like you don't want to be where everyone is staring at you. And you don't want all of that attention, you don't want that spotlight. So they in some small ways can't overlap, right? And so sometimes they might be even misdiagnosed. But this one tends to be more that like being enclosed in a crowd rather than feeling like the crowd is all staring at you, if that makes sense. So the presence of the crowd versus the attention of the crowd. So again, the motivation behind it. Lots of movies featuring panic attacks. Inside Out 2, right? Riley has a panic attack. I have a little clip of that. I'll play for you. And kind of interesting to see how they portray it with like anxieties in the driver's seat, right? And it's just like a chaotic like mess. And then what that does to Riley's behavior on the outside, and obviously like internally as well, being fueled by those thoughts, they're only making it worse. And then as you're breathing like that, it only like aggravates everything here. And so finding a way to calm down, whether that's through something you think about, through distraction. You always see people breathing into a paper bag. It's not necessarily the most effective, but the idea is that you're focusing on this, on the like movement of the bag and the popping of the bag and the breath. So it's more distraction, right? Like finding a way to pull yourself out of it. And if you can catch it early, you can do that before it spirals too far. Did you have a thought or comment?
I did, but your daughter, my daughter says, wow, they showed how my brain works. And
Yeah,
like,
interesting.
it's interesting that they can put characters, like cartoon characters, and I can relate to that, because like, I'm not really fast for you, like, how your brain moves so erratically, and kids understand, like, oh, it's me too.
Right.
Yeah, so it's nice to see that.
Yeah, it was a really cool portrayal of like emotions. And then in that case, like what's happening with like someone with experience like
Every different,
Yeah.
yeah.
really cool. Yeah. Yeah. Right. How they all show up during puberty, right? Yeah. And it's wild to see, like, I have 3 kids that are like teen and preteen, like 11 and 13, and when those emotions like showed up, like it was like, oh, it's just like in the movie. Like I felt the joy of like, I wish I could push them away, right? Because it was a little overwhelming. Like out of nowhere to see these developmentally different things and to have twins going through it together at the same time. Yeah.
I very distinctly remember the first time experiencing a panic attack.
Sure.
And like I remember thinking and like kind of laughing it off for it happened, because like the first thing that I thought of after it had like subsided was that scene in Chicken Little in like the beginning.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's
But
another
it's
good
like
one.
that. It's like so mixed with the scene of like SpongeBob trying to reveal his name is at the exact same time.
Right.
And like then like the physical aspect is like, you know, you're kind of just looks like not even anything's happening. So I think it's harder for other people to understand that, especially if they haven't experienced it.
Yeah.
Whereas how can something lead you so to the untrained eye that nothing's going on
Right.
when everything is going?
Yeah, isn't that wild? And that's the wild thing about mental illness is like, I would bet that there's at least one, if not more of you, that are dealing with something right now. Right in this very moment. I want to admit it, obviously, right? But like right now, right? And you're still sitting here functioning and doing everything that's expected of you. That doesn't mean you're not struggling, but you're doing, right? That's the wild thing about mental illness. You can have chaos beyond belief on the inside, and it's possible that nobody sees it. And those are great examples. I would even add Chase from Paw Patrol also has a panic attack. Lots of kids' movies with like characters experiencing panic attacks. Like, again, it's something that I think we're much more sensitive to now than we were in the past. So some causes, a lot of biology, a lot of biological stuff. They can be a little bit genetic. Okay, they tend to run in families. Now, is that you learned it or is it genetic? It can be tricky, that whole nature nurture debate, right? But they do tend to run in families, and they also tend to be very influenced by norepinephrine. So the neurotransmitter norepinephrine, which tends to be correlated to an area of the brain called the locus ceruleus. Those two kind of things together can often kind of be a little bit awry. And so what we have to do then is give people medication to lower like the level of functioning, lower the neurotransmitter, to try and help them stay a little calmer. Now, the tricky thing is panic attacks can be random, or they can be brought on by something specific. And so taking a medication all the time isn't always the most helpful, right? Because then you're taking this medication constantly for something that could or could not happen. But we do have medications that tend to help, obviously, with anxiety and with panic attacks. But the thought process is a big one, right? And you can hear that. I love with Riley, like you can hear her thoughts. I'm not good enough. I have to score. I have to do this. Like the cognitions, the thoughts that this person is having can fuel it so much. And then the anxiety sensitivity, as I was saying, like you start breathing faster and then you focus on the breath. And now you're really worried about the breath, which causes more worrying. And then you start to feel lightheaded and then you get even more worried and it just spirals, right? It's like that anxiety sensitivity. So learning how like, okay, this is normal. I'm not having a heart attack. I'm panicked. I can control this, right? And learning to calm yourself down.
So backtracking just a little bit.
Yeah.
Like breathing into the bag, there's no biological actual, benefit to it. It's just
Yeah.
redirecting focus.
Yeah, so the biggest benefit of it is redirecting the focus. So like you're breathing in the fumes that you have breathed out. So that's one thought as to why it could help a little bit. But like the carbon
CO2.
monoxide, like yeah, like that you're like coming out with, but then carbon dioxide, right, that you're coming out with. But the biggest idea behind why it works is like the focus on the bag, right? The popping sound of the bag as it inflates and deflates, that it distracts you. I saw a TikTok, it was like, it was like forever ago at this point. But if somebody was starting to have a panic attack, and then their friend is like, here, will you do this for me? Right. And then he goes to do it and he's like, oh, I'm fine. Right. It's like distraction, right?
That's what I was getting at.
It's more
like if you
distraction.
don't have a bag, so it's just as effective to be like, hey, whatever.
Yeah, so the thought is that you like when you're breathing too fast, you lose a lot of carbon dioxide, right? Like when you're hyperventilating. And so one thought was that then you're like kind of getting some of that back, but it's not shown to be helpful enough. It's more the distraction, right? But that was the idea behind it initially. Yeah.
I think that like in other psychology class that the reason like it's not breathing specifically into the bag, but just breathing like deeply.
Yeah.
It helps because when you're breathing like slow and deeply, you're in a calm state.
Yeah.
So it helps you get back to that.
Yeah, box breathing, right? Oh, another example, right? In the new Wednesday season, right? Like, what's his name? The Enid and then her boyfriend. Bruno? I forget. I have watched it like 6 times. I think I'd have it memorized. But like they're like tied up and he starts having a panic attack and she tells him to box breathe, right? Like breathing where you breathe in and then out and you're counting. Again, you're focused and those deep breaths increase the oxygen and help you a little bit as well. So many great examples. Yeah. Yeah. More than one.
Is there a specific time frame of like, okay, that's too far apart? Like if you have like 10 versus 37, like that's not a disorder.
So usually we say within 6 months. Okay, but that can be really rough. Like if it was years in between, they might kind of restart the clock in a way. But it's usually between 6 months and a year, right? If you have another one, but it depends. There isn't a hard rule, but typically you want them to be close enough that they feel related. Like if they were 10 years apart, you wouldn't count it. But like a year apart is a little more of a gray area, if that makes sense. All right. Before we get to OCD, superstitions, which feels so perfect for this time of year, right? As we get into September and then October, best months of the year for me. Superstitious thinking is a big part of OCD. And we'll talk about obsessive compulsive disorder in a moment. But it tends to be very correlated to this idea that your like future events can be influenced or foretold by unrelated prior events. So it's like this superstitious thinking or like magical thinking that we engage in that goes a little bit awry. Now we all do this a little bit, okay? But when you do it excessively, it can kind of transition into something like OCD. Right, like what a day keeps the doctor away. An apple, right? Step on what and break what? Crack and break your mother's back when you're mad at your mom. Like every crack you can find, right? Like, all right, good luck to carry a rabbit's foot. Bad luck to walk under a ladder. Bad luck to break a. And black what or bad luck? I have 2. I'm screwed. Like cute cats. I know, right? They're like my best cats, right? Other than my really fat cat. But there are so many of these. Anyone else have what's another superstition? Anyone have other ones that you like say a lot or like believe or practice a lot? Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely not. No whistling. Yeah.
Oh, like if you're running and the light. Like,
okay,
but like not their thought or like, I don't even know why I do it, but it's just
And that's such a funny thing you said, I don't even know why I do it, and there's so many of these that like that tends to apply, right? Yeah.
So, it's not really the same, but, Greek culture, we have the evil eye and positive. And it's like, one of my ankle, like, it's like 2 weeks off.
Interesting.
It's supposed to ward off. It's evil spirit.
Right, and that's very much here, right? Or like, better knock on wood, right? Like knocking on wood really randomly, this one, like the thought was that good spirits lived in trees. And so if you knock on anything made of a tree, you're calling upon the fortune of the good spirits to protect you, which is why you knock 3 times, right, for the Trinity. Spilling salt, what do you do when you spill salt?
Over your shoulder.
To throw it over your shoulder, spill more of it, right? Like, and the idea with that one is you're blinding the evil spirit lurking behind you, right? Like little things again, like you don't necessarily think about that in the moment. You're just like, oh, salt, right? But you're blinding the evil spirit, or you're knocking on the tree to bring forth that like good luck. Yeah.
So if there is a correlation between superstitions and panic attacks, you going back to the Greek thing,
Or between an OCD. Yeah, yeah.
OCD.
Mhm.
is there any new studies that talk about certain cultures are
Sure.
more
Yeah.
suspicious than others?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
And so they might be
Italians, not so
less likely.
suspicious, you know, the Chinese, very suspicious.
Yeah.
Do they, find that
Mhm.
that culture has more?
So the DSM is our country, is the United States. Other countries use something called the ICD, the International Classification of Diseases or Disorders. And so it might be that they diagnose it less because it's a more common culturally accepted phenomenon. Like, for example, different disorder, but in Ireland, schizophrenia is really, really common. Okay, it has a genetic component, small island, you tend to see more cases of schizophrenia. As a
Right.
culture, they don't diagnose it as much because they don't consider it as pathological as we do. They take care of each other instead of considering it a like severe mental illness. So different cultures tend to view things differently, which is so interesting, because some cultures are way more superstitious than others. Yeah, yeah, you see a lot of that in like little pockets, right? Anyone else? Other superstitions that you do or follow? Or yes. Do you do cinnamon through the front door on the first of the month? Right, my partner does that every first and then is upset when she forgets, right? Yeah. Oh, no. Okay. I hate those tomatoes. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so do I, right? And like, again, like there's gotta be some like superstitious belief, and sometimes we don't even know what it is, but we do it anyway, right? Just to be safe. Yeah.
There's a superstition that it cheers and don't drink, but everyone else has to cheer
Wrong.
your destinies divorce if you're currently married or not set for the rest of your life.
So it's pretty good, right? All right, now I get it, right? Interesting, right? Performers are notorious with superstitions, right? Like, don't say good luck, right? And you have to, because of like Macbeth, right? Like you have to say break a leg instead of good luck. Like all the little things that people who are in sports and performances do are wild. Anytime, okay, next time you watch a sports, like it's not as common in football because football moves a little bit quicker, but like basketball or baseball, watch the guy when he goes up to bat. They always have a routine that they follow with how many times they Velcro and unvelcro the glove or step in and out of the box or swing the bat. Basketball players, when they go to take that penalty shot, the number of times they flip the ball, dribble it, adjust something, touch something, like they have all of these routines. And there's nothing wrong with a routine, but sometimes they can take too much time. They interfere or they get in the way, or you get so obsessed with the thought that like, if I don't do X, something bad will happen. Remember that season? You might not remember. I remember it vividly, where the Patriots were like perfect season all the way through, right? Like I'm a big Tom Brady fan. So like the whole season, I wore my lucky jersey every game and they won every game. My wife washed it before the Super Bowl and they lost. And I blame her. I blame her. I was like, it's all your fault. All your faults, right? They lost that one game because of you, right? And it's like that. That's superstitious thinking. I'm going to say I have OCD because of it. But it could transition to it if I get carried away with those thoughts, right? Like the athlete that will wash that lucky sock, right? And it stinks and they don't care because it's lucky, right? Like it's really common in athletes and performers. Yeah.
There's this baseball player. I guess it was like a rookie. His name is Bet. He like messed up his routine, and the rookie after the game was asked like why he has a black eye.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I guess it's not supposed to mess with it again. Very lucky. He thought it would make him like do that.
Yeah. I mean, and that's so true. Like it's really, really common with like athletes and performers. People in high pressure situations, you try and grasp for something to make you feel better, to feel control. Yeah.
Skin partner, they have to like tighten their bow 3 times
Yeah.
and then they can adjust it.
Right.
Or not like, I think before every show, it's a show's fire.
Right, right. And a lot of people have routines like that. Was that a hand? Did you have a thought too? Or-
Well, for the athletes in particular.
Yeah,
There's actually studies about there being muscle memory.
yeah,
That's something
sure.
that ramps up the muscle
Right,
memory.
right, right,
You
right.
can't have the muscle memory of actually swimming, hitting the ball.
Yeah.
But all the stuff that leads up to it, that is muscle memory, so.
Well, and it's a lot of conditioning. Okay, last time when I unvelcroed my glove 3 times, I got a home run. So I better do it again.
But it's
Right.
just like,
Yeah.
it's actually, there's,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there can be that.
Well,
Now, my daughter, every time that she got a home run, it was like she had done this like one random move before where she swung the bat. And she was all like, I think my body just knows when I do that, I'm gonna get a home run. And I'm like, well, then do it every time. Let's go. And then it didn't work. And she's like, I must have done it wrong. You know, and it can work. Like, and like, there's nothing wrong with those things at all. But they can go too far. Yeah.
Learning a new skill, but mirroring someone else's.
Sure.
So play a sim-
It could, and you could even pick up somebody else's OCD stuff without understanding
like-
why. Yeah. Erroneous beliefs that come with this disorder. And like any other disorder, a lot of us have little pieces of this, right? Like, so with OCD, it's this disorder where you have these disturbing thoughts that then prompt you to have senseless ritual. Okay, so you have a thought that causes you anxiety, and then you perform a behavior to get rid of the anxiety. Now, again, we all do this to some degree. So every single night before I go to bed, like we have a routine, right? Like we put the cats out so they don't keep us up all night with their shenanigans. Put the cats out, we turn off the lights, check the front door, check the kids, go to bed, right? Every night, same routine, right? I have my jobs, my partner has her jobs. My job is the front door, one of them anyway, right? And the pets. But I go to the front door and I oftentimes, like, I'll go and I'll look at it and I'm like, okay, it's locked. But sometimes I'll unlock it and then relock it just to make sure, right? Nothing abnormal about that. I'm just making sure it's all the way locked. But let's say, like, I'm not satisfied with that all of a sudden, right? And now I'm like unlocking it and relocking it like 4 or 5 times. I'd still say that's not that abnormal. But where it could transition to abnormal, I get into bed. I can't sleep because I'm so convinced I didn't actually lock the door. And I have to get out of bed and go check the front door to make sure it's locked. And then I make my partner go check it, and there's no way she did it right. So I got to get up and do it again, right? Like she would do it right. I didn't do that.
That's old age, hon.
I'm like, it's recorded. I better be careful. But like, let's just say like I start getting up to do it and I'm doing it more than once. Now I'm not sleeping because I'm so anxious that I didn't lock the door. That's where you transition from like a normal behavior to something more like OCD. So with this disorder, we have 2 pieces to it. We have the obsessions and we have the compulsions, and they work together, right? So the obsessions are the thoughts, the images, the impulses that come into your mind and feel out of your control. Okay? I'm going to get sick if I don't do some kind of behavior. Someone's going to break in if the door isn't actually locked, right? Like I need to balance this. Sometimes there's a lot of things with balance with OCD, right? It has to be an even number or whatever it might be. It's a very common one. And then as a result of those obsessions, you perform a compulsion, a behavior to make it better. And you have to follow certain rules. Oh, the OCD during COVID was through the roof, right? Like if I don't do hand sanitizer, or if I don't wear a certain mask, or if I don't wash my hands a certain way, I'm going to get sick, right? So there can be cultural things that influence this, But hand washing, checking, turning things on and off a certain number of times, those are all really, really common like routines that people have. But you have a thought that leads to a behavior, and the behaviors take up time. They interfere with your life in some way, and they make it hard for you to function. I had a student, it was pre-COVID, so like maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I was gonna say 6 or 7, but every time I say 6 or 7, my kids go 6, 7. Like, and that yelled at me like so many times in practice yesterday. It was crazy. So now I say 7 or 8, 7 or 8 years ago. I had a student sat right here, right in this room, right, and she would get up and leave like 4 or 5 times every class. And I like didn't notice it for a couple of weeks. Like it didn't click in my mind. I guess it was distracted. I was thinking about other things. But eventually I noticed it. And every time she'd get up, I'm like, where was she's going? Like, because she would leave a bunch. I was like, maybe she's going to the bathroom, maybe something's going on. I don't know. I was never going to ask. It was just going to be like a point of curiosity for me forever. We finished this lecture and she came up after class and she was like, have you ever wondered where I go? During class, I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Like, I was like, I wasn't gonna ask you, I didn't want to be rude, but yes, I've been so curious for like weeks. Where are you going? She's like, I go out to my car to check that it's locked, and then I come back. And I was like, 4 or 5 times every class? And she's like, I'm convinced I didn't lock it, and somebody's gonna steal it if I don't go check it. I'm like, you walk all the way out and all the way back, like, and you're not sweaty or anything. I was like, good for you. You're much better. And she's like, yeah, I never realized it was OCD, like, until we talked about it. And I was like, yeah, your thought is that someone's gonna break into your car, and the compulsion is I need to go check it and lock it. And she's like, yeah, I lock it and unlock it 5 times just to make sure, and then I come back. And then the anxiety builds and I have to leave again. And I felt so bad because I was like, okay, next class, I'm not gonna let you leave. Right? I was like, when you go to get up, I'm gonna tell you to sit down. And she didn't show up the next class. I felt so bad. I was like, you awful person. And she came the next time, she's like, I couldn't come. I was so scared. And I was like, I felt so, I'm sorry, I was trying to help you. And she's like, but like, if I go to get up today, like, don't let me. Like, okay, deal, right? And she sat there the whole time and she was like, she was sweating, but she didn't get up once that whole class. And she's all like, and she like went right after class to check in, but she didn't get up the entire time, right? And then the next class, she looked a little less stressed. And the next one, like it was a form of flooding in a way. She faced it head on, and she was able to break the habit. What happens with this is it gets reinforced. Nothing bad happens because you've done the behavior, so you keep doing it, right? And so the treatment for this, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is breaking that cycle. You expose someone to whatever it is they're anxious of, and then you don't let them do anything about it. But I felt like such a mean person. Like I helped her in the end, but she totally didn't show up. I was like, I'm so sorry. I wasn't trying to be mean. But that's what it can look like for people. And I have an example of this. It's a young mom who struggles really badly with OCD. And this tends to affect parents really badly when they have children for the first time, because they're wanting to that it takes on her hands, them being red and cracked and bleeding, the amount of time it takes her to walk anywhere because she has to spin and check. It's interfering with her life, causing her that distress and impairment. And again, this is so common in new parents. Like new parents tend to develop some of this when they have a baby that's born. When my first was born, anyone who came anywhere near her, I would like be so rude to them. And I'm like so not a rude person, but I remember we were in Target and like this old woman came up to my daughter, I was like, back off, grandma. Like, get away from her. Like, you're gonna get her sick. I felt like I just wanted to put a bubble around her because she was like my little baby, and like there's so much I can't control, and I just wanted to keep her safe. And then we had our twins 2 years later, and we went to Taco Bell on the way home from the hospital. Like, I was used to it by then, no big deal, right? Like, they literally came into the lobby, we ate and went home. I'm like, I would never have done that with my firstborn, right? But you can get used to these things, and sometimes they come and go. A lot of people developed contamination fears during COVID, and then they kind of subsided a little bit. But the idea here is that there's a couple of things that can cause them, and the first one doesn't have any support, but it was a popular theory for years, so I included it. Freud thought that OCD came from potty training problems, right? And this was like so Freudian, right? Like that you literally were trying to control your feces and the elimination of things from your body. If you were punished or it was too harsh or too lenient, you would develop OCD as an adult. Really no correlation, there evidence to support it, but it was a common theory for years that you have to be very careful when you're potty training your children, because if you're too harsh, they will become anal retentive or have OCD as an adult, right? Again, no support really for that, but it was popular for a long time. What we see is much more popular is the behavioral conditioning level of this, right? It is very much rewarded. I did X and nothing bad happened, so I'm going to do X again. And maybe I'll even do it twice, right? Or 3 times or 4 times. And so the idea is you stop people from doing the behavior, the compulsion that makes them feel better. Like my student not letting her leave, not letting them wash their hand, stop locking and unlocking the door, knocking on something. You don't let them do it. And that's called exposure and response prevention. So you expose them to something that causes them anxiety, and then you don't let them do the response that would make them feel better. Now, oftentimes people are very upset. They are in incredible distress, but they work through it. Now, should something bad happen, it would make it even harder to work through, right? And unfortunately, sometimes things like that do happen. Like you don't let them wash their hands and they get sick. It's only going to reinforce it, right? But most of the time, you try and control what you can, and you don't let them do the behavior that would make themselves feel better. Yeah.
So then what would the treatment be for something like purely obsession? So they're not just pure, oh,
Yeah.
it's not-
Right. And so then you would just work through the thoughts. It's a lot of like fact checking. So you write down all the thoughts that you have, and then you systematically check each one of them. Is this a possible reality? How likely is it that it's going to happen? And what is the worst case scenario? What do I have control of? What do I not? And so you would focus purely on the thoughts, right? And it's a lot of like very like fact challenging, illogical assumption challenging kind of exercises. It's not as common, but it can happen where people have one but not the other. And it's usually that they have obsessions and no compulsions, not compulsions with no obsessions, if that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll get there on the next one, right? So,
That it's more common that there's pure obsession
Yes.
without pure compulsions.
and not the other way around. So you have the thoughts, but no behavior to counter it.
That makes sense. But compulsions, like, what would be the origin of them if you
Yeah.
didn't have an obsession?
Sometimes people do things and they don't know why they do them, right?
They just don't
Typically,
know why.
typically they're just not aware of it. Yeah. And then you have to become aware of it so then you can stop the behavior. Yeah, yeah. You would have to figure out the root of it. And oftentimes we struggle with things we don't know why. And so it's a lot of figuring out why through therapy. Yeah. So cognitively, that would be what we're talking about, right? Like you focus on the thoughts that are maintaining those different behaviors and trying to change them. But it could also be serotonin, right? So it's a big biological culprit. Serotonin, which is why things like antidepressants can help with OCD. Right. So antidepressants work a lot on serotonin specifically, and they can be very helpful for increasing the activity to create more serotonin to reduce some of the like compulsions and obsessions that are present. So it could be that somebody's on a medication. It could be that we focus on the thoughts, and it could be that we do a behavioral thing, right? You kind of have to look at what's going on for the person. And then there might be some combination of all of them as well. So for the young woman that we just saw, I believe they put her on a medication, right, on a low dose of like an SSRI, but then they do some of that behavior response prevention stuff, right? And what they do is force her to have some contamination, but she's not allowed to wash her hands. And you can see how upset she gets, but it gets better, right? Kind of like the idea with flooding, your anxiety can only go so high before it starts to come back down again, right? And once you realize that it reaches a peak and comes down, you can work through it a little better. So let me show you what that looks like for her when they do her decided to be able to walk. And you see how much stress it causes her, right? Like when she's trying to like rub it all over the couch, or like, ew, stop, right? Like that's something kind of like off about that, right? Like nothing wrong with not wanting to do that. But she does that, and then she touches him and she's crying and she's upset, but she works through it. And that is very much this exposure and response prevention. It can be incredibly helpful for people. Along with, they mentioned she's on Prozac, she's on a medication to work on her serotonin levels. And the combination of those two really help her. A lot of OCD is it's just been maintained. So you have to break that cycle in order for a person to get better. And it can be difficult to do, but when you break the cycle, that item loses some of its power, and then it can get a little bit better and better and better. So a very common anxiety disorder. What we'll do next time, I'll stop here. We'll talk about, there's a few OCD related disorders like hoarding, probably the most fun one to say of all disorders, trichotillomania, excoriation and body dysmorphic disorder. So we'll pick up here next time. And then we'll move on to chapter 5, which is stress and trauma disorders. So we'll wrap this up and move on. Don't forget over the weekend to start thinking about your first part of the paper, that little short character selection. Have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll see you all on Monday. Yeah.
On your modules, is it explaining that the.
Yes. So we went over it in the oh no, you're fine.